Good morning, everyone. It's John here. Today is October 24th, 2020. I'm recording this video because, mostly for posterity, I want my family, my kids, to be able to know what happened, and I don't know, I think it's important, and it's very interesting. This video is about what happened to me as a young man. In my first marriage, I had a very young daughter and a wife, and this was around, I'm pretty sure, between 1990 and 1991. I'm not exactly sure on the year. It's been a long time ago, but I remember every detail of what happened that day. It was an experience I'll never forget. I was traveling from my mother-in-law's house. The setting is southern Indiana. It would be Lexington Township, not Lexington Town. It would have been outside of Hanover, Indiana, about 10 minutes out in the country. Well, we're at my mother-in-law's house out in the country, like I said, and we had been there all day visiting and whatever with the baby, with our little toddler, and we decided to leave. It was just after dark, and getting where you could see the stars and stuff. We walked out and got the baby in the car, and we drove down the driveway, and the driveway from my mother-in-law's house to the gravel road that she lived on was probably a 1/16 of a mile long, something like that. Wasn't real long. Her driveway came into basically a U-turn it would have been like basically a left-hand hard angle turn, where her driveway come out right in the center of that turn. And we come down and stop, to look, make sure nothing was coming. And I noticed what I thought over to our right above us was an airplane. It looked like a small plane coming in with a flashing light on it. And I was like, look, there's an airplane. My wife's like, yeah, I see it. So we take a left and we go up a hill, and we're on a gravel road out in the middle of nowhere. Soybean fields everywhere. And the plane makes a turn, and it comes over towards us as we're going left and going up a grade to go to a really straight road that went down for a few miles. And we're going up the grade, and the plane comes over like flying towards our area. It looked like it was going to go past us, behind us, when we turned, but then it kind of turned and came with us. And so I'm thinking, well, that's kind of interesting, but whatever. You see lots of planes, no big deal. So we go up the grade, and suddenly this thing is right next to us, lower than treetop level. There's a field, and then there's a forest behind us. There's a forest on the other side, and a big soybean field on one place, and then before that is a cattle pasture. And as we're traveling through the edge of the cattle pasture down the road, this light comes down next to us, and it looks like a huge just circle of white light, just pure white light. And it looked like it was maybe 3 to 5 feet around the circle. I'm thinking it's a helicopter, because we couldn't hear any airplane. We rolled the windows down, you couldn't hear anything. And I'm thinking maybe it's a helicopter and there's spotlights on us or something. And we go up about a half a mile, and this thing's just right next to us, just 50 feet off the ground probably, and maybe 100 yards from us away. And so there's another driveway to an old place up on the left as we're traveling, and I just decide I'm gonna stop and back in this driveway and aim my headlights towards the field where this light's at. It stops with us. My wife, when this thing stopped, when we stopped, she started freaking out, man. Screaming, crying. I mean, like, it was something. She was really freaked out, man. She was making the baby cry. I'm like, well, can't escape whatever it is. So I wanted to see what the hell was up. So like I said, I'm back in this driveway, facing the gravel road, field on the other side of us, and this light is just standing there in in the field. It's over a soybean field at this point, and it's standing in the field, and it's got, like I say, about a 4 or 5 foot circumference and just a really bright white light. And so I get out and I'm just trying to look and see, and I turn the car off. I left the headlights on and I turned the car off so I could try to hear, what the crap this is. And there's no noise. The grass doesn't move underneath of it. There's no noise. You don't see the soybeans moving anything. Okay, and this thing's maybe 50 feet off the ground, maybe less than that. So I'm like, this is very strange. So I reach in my car and I flip the headlights on and off. I flash them 3 times. And I kid you not, I am not shitting you. The light went off and on 3 times out in the sky. And I'm like, well, by this time I'm just completely excited. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, hell, beam me up. Ain't nothing worse than this life on this planet, man. Just beam me up, And so I keep flashing the lights on and off 3 times periodically. This is probably over a 5-minute period. And this thing, every time I do it, it'll flash the lights on and off 3 times. Mind you, no noise, no movement, nothing. It's 100 yards from me and 50 feet in the air and about 3 or 4 feet around this white light. So I decide, well, my wife is screaming. I mean, she is just flipping the hell out. Okay, she's freaking out. And I'm like, well, I better leave. So I get in the car and I take off real fast as I can go. And this is a V8 Impala. And I'm hauling ass. I probably got up 70 miles an hour. And this thing, it kind of sat there and like let us leave. And then all of a sudden it shot past us. And there was a bright, almost like a white beam of light that went behind it. And it shot across up about, I don't know, a mile or so in front of us, and then stopped straight in the air and zoomed back the other way and left a streak of light back the other direction. It was amazing, to say the least. It was the most amazing thing I ever seen. So now I'm thinking, well, we either got a UFO here, this is aliens, or this is some kind of asshole pilot doing some kind of experimental stuff for the government or something. We got, there's something, this is not normal. So my wife, like I said, she's having a stroke. So we headed back towards town. Our family had a small deer processing plant. And so we headed back to tell my parents about it. Well, as we traveled back, it's probably a 15-minute drive in the country to this little town, Hanover. And there was so much clear sky. I mean, it was just absolutely a phenomenal, beautiful night. And as we were leaving, this thing, it would get, out of ways of distance from us, up higher as we started traveling through the regular highways. And it would flash on and off 3 times. As far as I'm concerned, they're saying, hey, we're still here, we're still watching you, we know where you're at. So for 15 minutes, this thing did this. It would stay close to us if we were like in a desolated area as we traveled. And if we got into houses or traffic, it would go up in the sky. But it would still flash on and off 3 times, no matter how high it went. So we got back to town, and this thing's still doing this 3 times on and off flashing as we get in the processing plant and talk to my parents. And I come out and I'm like, look at this. Look what this is doing. And it would do the flashing on and off 3 times. And I told them about the experience, and I'm like, let's see if it'll follow us. So I put my parents, my wife, and the baby in the car, and we hauled ass out in the country a different direction, completely away from where we come from. This thing came down low again, where my parents could see it again, and it would flash on and off 3 times, and would flash on and off 3 times. And we drove around, I know, 30 or 40 minutes out in the country, just driving around, seeing what it would do. And it stayed with us, and it just kept flashing on and off 3 times, saying, I'm here. So I don't know, after about 45 minutes of this, it shot up in the sky. You could see that white light behind it, and it was it was miles high. And you could see that white light go behind it, and it exploded into space. It was gone. I mean, instantly. That little streak of white light behind it, miles in the sky. Well, I decided, we went back to the processing plant, my parents, and I decided to use their phone. This was before, the modern marvel of internet and everybody having a cell phone. So we used a landline, and I called the sheriff, and I told him what had happened, and told the dispatcher. And they said, all right, and they asked me for my address, and I gave them my address, and then we headed back home. We lived about 30 minutes from where we were at in Madison, Indiana. And we get to our house and unload the baby and get in the house and everything, and we're just kind of like, freaking out over what just happened. I don't know, we'd been home maybe a half an hour, maybe an hour, and there's a knock on the door. I open the door, it's the county sheriff and some guy in a suit. I'm like, oh boy. He said, John, he said, we want to come in and talk to you about what happened tonight. And I said, okay. And he comes in and he says, John, he said, I'm the sheriff, which I realized he was the county sheriff, not a deputy, he was the sheriff. And with him was this man in a suit, and he told me that man was an FBI agent, and that they wanted me to tell them what had happened to me. And so I just told him the story I just told you. And I told him, I said, I don't know if that was a UFO or if that was, maybe an experimental plane. I don't know what that was. I said, but there was something. And the FBI agent said, well, he said, if that was a military plane and that was an experimental plane, he said, I'll have that man in Leavenworth in a week. He said, but the fact is this has been happening all over. And you're not the first person to report this. He said, you're not the first person that this has happened to. He said, we've got a book that we're putting all this in to record these events. He said, this is going to go in that book. He said, and I want you, if you ever see anything strange like this again, you make sure you call the sheriff here and let him know. And so I don't know what that was, folks, but it happened to me. I have multiple witnesses. My ex-wife, my parents, they're still alive. It was an amazing thing. And people say that there isn't something out there. Well, I really believe that was not an experimental plane. Why would the pilot working for the government screw with somebody and cause them to get publicity they don't want? So I don't really believe that's what it was. But I just wanted to tell you all my story, and I thought, it's interesting, and it really happened. And I was just wondering, is there anybody out there that might have experienced this same type of thing that I did, but the thing trying to contact you, flashing on and off, or this white light that made no noise or movement on the ground when it was low? Maybe you guys could give me hit me up on this YouTube channel and let me know if you've had this kind of experience, because I would like to talk to somebody else that this has happened to. I think maybe it would be, I don't know, maybe we could find out a little bit more about it. But anyways, guys, I just wanted to make this video for you. And like I said, this is something I can give my family when I'm gone, so they have a record of what happened. I don't know. Life's amazing. Amazing things happen. It's just hard to believe the things we can go through. Just a normal person. Some of the amazing, huge things, the events that can happen in our lives. But God bless y'all, and God bless America.